project, I decided to choose a topic I was really passionate about. And the first thing I looked for was poetry, because I write poetry and I really feel inspired to write. And I wanted to take a look at what inspires other people to write, how writing corresponds with the writer himself, where the inspiration comes from, and really what makes a person's writing unique. And that was where I'm going with this. Poetry is personal. First off, I asked myself, what is poetry? I have a few quotes here. Edgar Allan Poe, famous poet, says, "Poetry is the rhythmical creation of beauty in words." William Wordsworth says, "Poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings." And even the Greek philosopher Plato has something to say about poetry. And he says, "Poetry is nearer to the vital truth than history." I asked around Wayne Spence, our local professional poet, and he said, "Poetry is a translation of abstract thought into words significant to the writer and open to interpretation to the reader." And that really got me thinking, poetry is really all about the writer. Anything the writer writes comes from himself or herself, not just writing to write professionally. Even professional writers write for themselves. For my research, I talked to a lot of other poets. I decided not to go for these old sources, but instead talk to the poets directly. And I held many discussions with different poets online from different parts of the U.S. and even a few in England. And I believe I talked to one in Finland. I have some quotes from them. I asked them questions like, what does poetry mean to you? Why do you write? Where do you find inspiration? Catherine Jeans of England says, "I think I'm starting to recognize that you don't have to try to be artsy to say something." Lily Leader of Washington says, "If a piece of writing is important to the writer will make sure it is important to the reader as well." And Quinn, she wouldn't let me release her last name, of Finland, says, "I use my imagination to create moments I could have never experienced myself and write about those." So all of these writers really write for themselves first. And that ties in with poetry is personal. The main part of poetry, of course, corresponding with itself, is the poetic voice, which is essentially how a person writes. The first part of poetic voice is tone. Like I'm using a different tone to speak to you with my own voice. You can vary your tone in poetry with your meter, which is the rhythm of the poetry. Syntax, the length of the lines. You can shorten the lines to create a more drastic effect, or lengthen the lines to let it flow out, something more romantic and flowy. Rhyme, of course, rhyme is often good in poetry, especially Dr. Seuss had a lot of rhyme, and his poetry really stuck in your mind. Punctuation, you can create stops and pauses in certain places creatively with creative use of punctuation. And diction, word choice. Certain words have different connotations to different people. And knowing those connotations and using them to create a certain effect or imagery is very effective in the poetic voice. I have a student example here from Augusta Gray, from her poem Absolute Friendship. "There will be laughs and cries, truths and lies, but in the end, true friends will be there to catch you when there's nothing left but to fall." You can see how she uses this rhyme in these first and second lines, and that long line followed by the short line to create that real important emphasis there. The second part of poetic voice is metaphor and simile. Metaphor is essentially the translation, taking this abstract thought, this abstract idea, this emotion, and putting it into terms that anyone can understand. Metaphor and simile is especially important in poetry, and good use of it can really create a good poem. I've got another example here from Jessica Peck, from her poem Keep Fishin'. "Get dealt the wrong card? Keep fishing. Fall in the water? Swim with a smile. Have a bad day? Make it worthwhile. Keep fishing." She uses the metaphor keep fishing to say, just keep going. That's what she's trying to exemplify by using a metaphor that everyone understands. You hear this all the time, just keep fishing, keep going, there's plenty more fish in the sea. So she uses this to really convey what she's trying to say to her readers. The last part of poetic voice is imagery, and it's probably the most important part of the poetic voice. Imagery is determined by diction. Again, certain connotations of different words may inspire certain memories in the reader, or specific images. Tone, again, and metaphor all add to this imagery, this whole picture that you get when you're reading a poem, or when you're writing a poem. And usually, when a writer is writing, they'll start with this picture in mind and build the words to fit the picture. I have another student example from Cody Gregory, from his poem, A Love Never Heard. And what of love's sweet remedy, a true hidden poison, I say, seeping through dying veins and dominating my brain. When you read that, you can really imagine that true hidden poison seeping through your veins and dominating your brain. It's very visual, and it's really powerful in poetry. My product, I did an anthology entitled Every Life Has a Voice. The theme of the anthology was write a piece of poetry or prose about something that is important to you, or an event, or a memory that has significance to you, and submit it. And I urged all entrants to also submit a reflection, telling exactly why it was important to them and what it means to them. I have that here, and I can pass this around. This is a rough manuscript of it. I couldn't get the actual book in time. Miss Doherty said they just delivered them yesterday, so we might have gotten them tonight, but of course they'll probably send it tomorrow. I had help from the creative